In 2011, a revolution began with hope, but ended in ruin. Libya's dictator was overthrown, yet the dream of freedom died with him. What followed was a modern war fought not only by Libyans, but by NATO, Russia, Turkey, and militias from across Africa. This is the story of how the fall of one man opened the door to a global struggle for power, and how Libya became the world's forgotten battlefield. For 42 years, Libya was defined by one man, Muammar Gaddafi. In 1969, he seized power in a bloodless coup, establishing the Libyan Arab Republic. His vision, outlined in his Green Book, promoted a unique blend of socialism and Arab nationalism. He nationalized Libya's vast oil wealth, transforming the nation. Under his rule, living standards skyrocketed. Free education, healthcare, and modern infrastructure became the norm. But this prosperity came at a steep price. Gaddafi's regime was notoriously authoritarian. Dissent was crushed, human rights were violated, and Libya was accused of sponsoring international terrorism, including the infamous 1988 Lockerbie bombing. By the early 2000s, Gaddafi tried to mend fences with the West, but 4 decades of iron-fisted rule had created deep-seated resentment. The very tribes and militias he once armed and controlled were simmering, waiting for their moment. That moment arrived in February 2011, the wave of the Arab Spring, which had toppled regimes in Tunisia and Egypt, crashed onto Libya's shores. Protests erupted in the eastern city of Benghazi, with people demanding democracy and an end to Gaddafi's long reign. His response was swift and brutal. Security forces opened fire on demonstrators, and soon airstrikes were being called in. What began as a protest movement quickly spiraled into a full-blown civil war. In the east, rebel groups united to form the National Transitional Council, creating a rival power center. Gaddafi, defiant as ever, went on television and vowed to hunt down the rebels, whom he called rats, house by house. The world watched in horror as the conflict intensified, setting the stage for international intervention. Faced with an impending humanitarian crisis, the United Nations passed Resolution 1973, authorizing all necessary measures to protect civilians. This gave the green light for NATO to launch Operation Unified Protector. A no-fly zone was established over Libya, and a coalition led by the US, UK, and France began a relentless bombing campaign against Gaddafi's military assets. The air support decisively tipped the scales in favor of the rebels. One by one, key cities fell: Misrata, Zintan, and finally the capital, Tripoli, in August 2011. The end came on October 20th. Cornered in his hometown of Sirte, Gaddafi was captured and killed by rebel fighters. His 42-year rule was over. NATO's mission was declared a success, but its victory created a dangerous power vacuum that would soon plunge Libya into even deeper chaos. With Gaddafi gone, the fragile unity of the rebels shattered. Libya was left with no strong central government, just a patchwork of rival militias, each with its own local, tribal, and ideological loyalties. The National Transitional Council, the supposed government in waiting, was powerless to disarm them or assert control. Instead, Gaddafi's massive weapon stockpiles were looted and spread across North Africa, fueling conflicts in Mali, Niger, and beyond. The chaos hit home for the West in September 2012, when militants attacked the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, killing Ambassador Chris Stevens. By 2014, the country had fractured completely, splitting into two warring factions, Islamist-led groups in the west, based in Tripoli, and nationalist forces in the east, based in Tobruk. The post-Gaddafi era had turned Libya into a failed state, a playground for warlords. This division marked the beginning of the Second Libyan Civil War, a conflict that turned the country into a chessboard for foreign powers. Two rival governments emerged, each claiming to be the legitimate ruler of Libya. In Tripoli, there was the Government of National Accord, or GNA, which was recognized by the United Nations and backed by Turkey and Qatar. In the east, based in Tobruk, was the Libyan National Army, or LNA, led by the ambitious General Khalifa Haftar. He drew support from Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, France, and, crucially, Russia. Libya was no longer just a civil war. It was a modern proxy war. Turkey sent advanced drones and Syrian mercenaries to prop up the GNA. On the other side, Russia's Wagner Group deployed private military contractors to fight alongside Haftar, while the UAE and Egypt provided funding and air support for his campaigns. Global and regional powers were now fighting their battles on Libyan soil, all competing for oil, strategic influence, and a stake in the country's future. In April 2019, this proxy war reached its devastating climax. General Haftar, confident in his foreign backing, launched a massive offensive to capture the capital, Tripoli. He declared his goal was to liberate the city from terrorists, but his assault resulted in a brutal year-long siege that caused thousands of civilian deaths and widespread destruction. For months, it seemed like Tripoli was on the verge of falling, but then Turkey dramatically escalated its intervention. The deployment of its sophisticated Bayraktar drones and thousands of Syrian fighters completely changed the battlefield. The drones decimated Haftar's supply lines and armored columns. By June 2020, facing heavy losses and a determined counter-offensive, Haftar's army was forced into a humiliating retreat. The battle for Tripoli was a decisive turning point. It proved that in this new Libyan war, foreign power was the ultimate kingmaker. Following the failed Tripoli offensive, the exhausted factions were pushed back to the negotiating table. In October 2020, a unbrokered ceasefire was signed. This led to the formation of a new, unified body, the Government of National Unity, or ENU, intended to merge the warring sides. The plan was ambitious. It called for the complete withdrawal of all foreign forces and mercenaries, the disarmament of militias, and most importantly, nationwide elections scheduled for December 2021 to finally give Libyans a say in their future. For a moment, there was a glimmer of hope, but that hope was short-lived. The elections were postponed indefinitely amid fierce disputes over who was eligible to run and the legitimacy of the entire process. The ceasefire held, but the country remained fundamentally divided between East and West, with foreign patrons still deeply entrenched, refusing to give up their hard-won influence. Today, the conflict has evolved. The central struggle is no longer just about political power, but about controlling Libya's greatest asset, its oil. Libya sits on Africa's largest proven oil reserves, and the revenue from these resources is the lifeblood for both warring governments. Control of oil fields and export terminals is the ultimate prize. In the east, Russia's Wagner Group, now rebranded as the Africa Corps, continues to guard key oil installations and military bases for Haftar, securing Moscow's foothold. Both sides employ mercenaries from neighboring countries like Chad, Sudan, and Niger to bolster their forces. The instability has turned Libya into a major hub for human trafficking and arms smuggling, feeding a migration crisis across the Mediterranean. The war for Libya has become a global competition for resources and territory, with ordinary Libyans caught in the crossfire. The human cost of this decade-long conflict is staggering. Hundreds of thousands of Libyans have been displaced from their homes, and entire cities lie in ruins. The economy is shattered, and the dream of a democratic, prosperous Libya has all but faded. The chaos has destabilized the entire region, flooding neighboring countries with weapons and fighters. For the thousands of migrants trying to reach Europe, Libya has become a place of nightmares, where they face abuse and exploitation in detention centers run by militias. The fall of Gaddafi didn't just break a nation, it destabilized a continent. As of today, Libya remains a country divided against itself. The government of national unity in Tripoli controls the west, while Khalifa Haftar's forces control the east. The United Nations continues to broker talks, but a clear path to lasting peace and elections remains elusive. Foreign troops and mercenaries from Russia, Turkey, and the UAE are still on the ground, a clear sign that this conflict is far from over. Ordinary Libyans continue to suffer, grappling with inflation, insecurity, and a political class that seems more interested in power than in people. The Libyan Civil War is a stark reminder of what can happen when a revolution's ideals are hijacked by geopolitical interests. It's no longer just Libya's war, it's a symbol of 21st century conflict, where the battle for freedom has been tragically replaced by a global fight for oil and influence. Thank you for watching. If you found this documentary insightful, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the events shaping our world. See you next time.